Hello, welcome at ESNext I want to thank you for joining my talk, ESNext proposals to look forward to. So let's get started. My name is Bramus, I'm a developer from Belgium. I discovered Vue Source in 1997, and that's quite a long time ago, and I kind of stuck around in the web ever since. I did a detour into PHP. I also was a lecturer web and mobile at a technical university for several years. But now I'm back at it as a front-end developer doing freelance work, HTML, CSS, JavaScript, mainly React nowadays, but my passion for CSS will never die. I also run a blog, it's bram.us. You can also follow it on Twitter at bramusblog, and on my website I collect interesting links to web-related stuff. Yes, next proposals to look forward to. Let's first take a look at the ECMAScript timeline. So this is it here. It starts at the very left. Well, my head is a bit in the way there, but it starts at the very left in 1995 when JavaScript was invented, and then it goes up to 2020 on the right there. What you see clearly here is this distinction. Well, what I see clearly here is this distinction between pre-2015 and post-2015. Because pre-2015 you had these irregular releases and the numbering went from 1 to 6. But then post-2015 we have regular releases, and the numbering includes the number of the year inside of the name of the release. So something changed. Well, something changed indeed, because before 2015, TC39, that's the committee that maintains and evolves the ECMAScript languages, said, okay, we have all of these features here that we want to include into the next release, so we're going to develop them. And once we have developed all of these features, then we are going to tag the new version. Whereas after 2015, they changed tactics. They said, let's simply release a new version every year. And at the moment that we collect everything for the new release, let's simply take a look at all of the proposals that have been finished, and we'll include those. So the yearly releases, they can have a several number of features available into them. For example, ES2016, they only have 2 features, whereas ES2020, they have 7 or 8 features that are included in the spec. So TC39, I mentioned it, that's a technical committee that maintains and evolves the ECMAScript language. And I say ECMAScript, that's also correct, it's not a slip of the tongue. ECMAScript is a general purpose language. It's standardized in ECMA 262, that's the name of the standard. And then JavaScript is an implementation of that standard. So they're kind of the same, but they're not. Same goes for ActionScript, if you remember that from back in the day. Same story, it also was an implementation of ECMAScript. The members of TC39, they are developers, implementers, academics, and invited experts. So developers, they can be from companies, for example, PayPal, they have a representative in there. Implementers, well, those are the browser vendors, or I should say the JavaScript runtime developers, because note, that's also a JavaScript runtime. But let's just call it browser vendors or browsers to keep it simple. And then academics and the invited experts. They meet up every 2 months. The meeting minutes, they are available online. You can find them on GitHub. And then to advance the proposal, they use a 5-stage process, or the TC39 development process, which is a 5-stage process. So that's the thing that they put in place since after 2015. And it looks like this. It goes from stage 0 to stage 4. Stage 0 is the straw person stage, and then we have 4 maturity stages. You can clearly tell that they're programmers here because they start numbering at 0 and they end up at 4. But stage 4, that's the 5th stage, so it gets kind of complicated. If you have a proposal for JavaScript, well, it has to start at stage 0 and then it has to advance towards stage 4. So let's take a closer look at all of these stages. Stage 0, this is the straw person stage. Basically, it comes down to, hey, I have this interesting idea from which the ECMAScript language would benefit. Here is my proposal. I think it's a nice thing. Would you consider it? So you can write it down on a napkin. That's fine. Everyone can send in a proposal. That's also fine. I can send in one. You can send in one. Or TC39 members can send in one. When your proposal advances to stage 1, that's TC39 signaling, okay, we're kind of interested in this. Let's see where this goes. So your proposal has to be written in prose, not using official spec language yet. And then also major changes are still allowed at this point because it's simply like a Kickstarter to see where things are going. Then when your proposal goes to stage 2, there are some requirements there. Well, they require that you have a formal description precisely describing like the API and the changes that you would like, and also in spec language. They expect an experimental implementation that can be something in the browser or in Babel. And at this time, this is a really interesting stage, because at this time it's the signal that TC39 says, okay, we seem to be onto something, let's further develop it and we'll most likely include it into the standard at the end. Then stage 3, that is the candidate stage. Here the feature is considered to be complete, and what they require at that time is feedback to make sure that nothing breaks. Feedback from implementers, again those are the browsers, and also external feedback, that's from us developers. If all goes well, your proposal advances to stage 4 without any changes, where it is considered finished. If there is an issue, well, only changes in response to critical issues are allowed here. But so if all goes well, it goes to stage 4 without any change, and here the proposal is finished and is ready to be included into the standard. So these are the 5 stages from stage 0 to stage 4. Do note that proposals can be withdrawn or dropped. For example, if a better proposal is suggested, then one proposal can be merged into another, or it can be dropped in favor of the other, things like that. And it's only those that make it into stage 4 that eventually make it into the next ES release. When is that? Well, at the January meeting that TC39 holds, they take a look at all the features that made it into stage 4, then they collect them and then they put them into the new version of the specification. By March, they have a draft version of the specification ready, and by July, that draft is approved by the General Assembly and the new version is officially released. So by the time this video will air, the TC39 meeting will have happened, if I'm not mistaken, so ES 2020 will be an official kind of thing. Woohoo! Yay! So that was a whole story to explain this great divide. One side note though, ES6, in 2015, it got renamed afterwards. They renamed it to ES 2015. So if you talk about ES6, well, that's not the correct term. You should say ES 2015. Now, let's take a look at a few of my favorite proposals. But before I continue, let me just move my head here to a different corner so that I don't obfuscate the code examples. Yes, here we go. So, favorite proposals of mine. Field declarations. What you can see here at the top right is the indication of which stage it is in, and then at the bottom you can see a link, mostly linking to the proposal itself or to a blog post explaining it all. So field declarations, this is the first proposal that gets me excited. Stage 3, so inclusion in the standard is very, very well, it's considered to be finished right now and they are awaiting feedback. Yes, the right screen is focused. So say we have a class here, ES 2015 style, and we have a variable in there, click count. How do we declare it? Well, the typical way would be to add it into the constructor and set the default value there. So of course we also have to call the parent constructor, the super constructor, and then we set this.clickCount to the value of 0. With field declarations, this has become more simple. They say, okay, just drop the constructor and immediately declare the variable inside of your class. So you set clickCount to the default value of 0. Great. Now this is a public field. You might be wondering, okay, what about private fields? A first guess would be the underscore, right? Like the underscore, no, that is still public. Because at this time, the underscore is an agreement between developers. If I say, okay, if it starts with an underscore, you have to use it privately. Well, the JavaScript runtime does not prevent me from accessing it publicly. So if they would push this change forward like it is, as we see here on the screen, many websites would break. So TC39, they settled on a different kind of prefix and they settled on the hash or the pound. Do note that this is not hashtag click count. This is the private field click count with a default value of 0. Stage 3, so we can expect it. I think it's headed for stage 4 and it will be part of ES 2021. Then optional chaining, this is one of my favorite proposals and I'm very, very glad to have seen it land in ES 2020. So here's an example. We have a message with a user and a content on there, and the user also has a few properties. Now let's select some stuff from there. For example, well, we'll use console.log to output it on the screen. Let's select the first name from there. Console.log message.user.firstname, and of course my first name will be shown on screen. Bramus, that is correct. Now let's select some inexistent stuff. For example, my last name, it is not defined there on message.user. So if we try to log that one, we get back undefined, because that's true, last name is not defined. Now let's select some inexistent stuff with the fallback value. For example, if the last name is not set, let's add a default value in there to be used instead. We can do that using short circuit logic right there. So message.user.lastName, that will evaluate to being undefined, undefined, or anonymous. Anonymous will be returned on screen and will be shown. Great. Now, complicated one. Let's select some existing stuff with the fallback value. For example, we want to output message.meta.publication date. And do note message.meta that doesn't exist there. We only have message.user and .content. So what will this show on screen? Will it show the current date or not? It won't. It will actually spit out an error, cannot read publication date of undefined. The undefined being message.meta. Well, it is undefined, so it can't read the publication date from it. So this is our problem. How can we solve it? There are a few workarounds that you can use. You can short circuit the whole thing by checking does it exist, does it exist, does it exist, and then do it. Kind of hacky. Message.meta, since that one here is undefined, this whole expression will evaluate to undefined, undefined, or the thing on the right. The thing on the right will be returned. This is a nasty workaround. This is another workaround where we always default do an empty object. So message, does it exist? If it doesn't exist, return object. That one does exist, so we get back message. And message.meta, we check that one, does it exist? No, it doesn't exist, so we get back the empty object. And then we try to read empty object.publication date. That one is undefined. The object itself exists, but the publication date is undefined, so we get back undefined or the thing on the right, and we get it shown. But this is really a very, very, very hacky workaround, very nasty, because you're always spitting out new objects. You shouldn't do that. So what is the proper solution? Well, the proper solution is something that is featured in ECMAScript nowadays, and it is the optional chaining operator. And it looks like this. Message question mark period, meta question mark period, publication date, or the new date to ISO string, and this will actually yield the correct result, so the current date will be shown on screen. Woo, nice. How does it work? Well, here's the description. It says, if the operand at the left-hand side of the optional chaining operator evaluates to undefined or null, the whole expression evaluates to undefined. So when we encounter the operator, which is the question mark and the period there, we check, does the operand at the left-hand side, is it null or undefined? That's not the case. Okay, we're just going to continue it, otherwise the target property will be triggered normally. Message, that one exists. Okay. The next time we encounter the operator, message.meta, is that one null or undefined? Oh, that's actually the case. That is undefined. So then it says, well, the whole expression evaluates to undefined. So this being the whole expression, we get back undefined or the new date to ISO string, and we actually then return the new date to ISO string on screen. Yes. Here's a summarizing slide that shows it all. No worries, the slides will be put online on my blog. You can find them there later. Cool. One side note though, it is spelled question mark period. It's not simply the question mark. So if you want to access a property, you have object question mark dot prop. But if you want to, for example, call a function that might not be defined, you have to put the name of the function, question mark period, and then the argument between parents. Kind of weird to type it all, but it makes sense. Then null coalescing. This one is a great addition, also part of ES 2020. You should definitely check it out. This one saves me a lot of typing time, a lot of code that I have to write. So we have this object here, and we just saw it using the optional chaining. Let's select some stuff with a default value in a safe way. For example, show splash screen. We want to output that and default to true. So this is how the code would look like. Message question mark period setting question mark period show splash screen or true. And what we get back here is not true, not false. We want false because false it is defined on there. But we get back true. That's a problem. Well, yeah, you can't really blame the language here because show splash screen actually is false. So false or true, well, that yields true. So how can we solve it? Well, enter the null coalescing operator, and it's this one right here, is a double question mark. And this will actually show on screen false, which is the result that we want. So how does it work? The null coalescing operator, it serves as an equality check against null or undefined. So if it encounters the operator, it will do a check against null or undefined. Is show a message.settings.show splash screen, is that null or undefined? No, that is not the case, so it will return the value from there, returning false eventually on the screen. Cool. Again, summarizing slide for you to check out if you want. Logical assignments. So we just saw the null coalescing thing. We could do this kind of stuff right now in our codes, like we could say options.foo, assign it with the value options.foo, or if that is null or undefined, assign the value of bar in there. Of course, you could use function default arguments, but that's not the point here. What is the point here? Well, if we do this kind of thing, we could always trigger a setter because we always do a write. We always assign a value into options.foo. Either we assign options.foo into it, or we assign bar into it. So we could trigger a setter right there due to this assignment. You could write it like this if you want, but that just feels wrong to write. So options.bas, and then if that one is null or undefined, then set the value of cooks in there. Kind of weird to type. A better way for us to do it is to use logical assignment, and it looks like this. Options.foo, the double question mark equals bar, so it will only set the value of bar into options.foo if options.foo is either null or undefined. It also works with or and with and. If you want to translate it, it basically boils down to this. With or it says, well, only assigned a value into A if it is falsy. Then with the double ampersand, so the and, only assign a value if A is truthy, and then with the double question mark, which we just saw, it says, well, only assign if the value is null or undefined. Nice. Dynamic import, I like this one. This is basically lazy loading for modules. Say you have a website with a lightbox. Without dynamic import, you import it at the top, and then only at the moment you click it, you're actually going to need it. Well, dynamic import says, you know what, that importing at the top, that's basically a waste of bandwidth and a waste of parsing that we need to do. What if you could only import it at the time you need it? And that's what dynamic import does. So we take the import from there, we're going to move it down, and it becomes this. So it says const lightbox await import the module. So the JavaScript, it will pause there, it will load up the module, and once it is done, it will continue and actually open the lightbox. I like this one. This is going to save some bandwidth. Side note, by the way, lazy loading for images, that's a thing in browsers nowadays. You only have to add loading equals lazy to your images. It also works on iframes, so please use this. The worst thing that you can do by adding this is actually saving some bandwidth to the user, so this is highly recommended. Alrighty, decimal, let's count to 0.3. I like this one. Stage 0, it will most likely change, but I like it. So in JavaScript, if you want to do this, 0.1 plus 0.2, what do we get back? No, it's not 0.3. It is 0.300000004. What? That's strange. Well, turns out this is not a problem with JavaScript, this is a problem with computers. Basically, they suck at floating point math. There's this wonderful website with this great URL, it's 0.30004.com for you to check out. It explains it all. So how can we solve this? Well, the proposal is to add a new type, which is the decimal, and it's indicated there with the M suffix. So if you add 0.1, the decimal, with 0.2, you get back the decimal 0.3, which is the correct result. Nice. Cancellation API. I like this one. It's stage 1 at this time. Sorry, it's stage 1 at this time, so the syntax will most likely change. So we have a promise right here. When we start it, we console.log, when we call it, we do console.log promise started, and after 2.5 seconds it is resolved, and we also log it on screen. But how can we stop this execution? How do we do that? Well, enter the cancellation API, and it looks like this. So we have our same function right there, but we add in an extra parameter there. It is the cancellation token, and you have to do 3 things with it. So the cancellation token, you pass it in there. First you say, okay, if it's already cancelled, then abort right here. The second thing you need to do is register callback. When the cancel function is being called, we execute this one. So what we do right here is we reject our promise. And then the third thing we need to do is clean up. So right before resolve, we unregister our callback. And this is how we use it. We make a new cancellation token source, we pass it into our function, and then after 1 second, for example, we call source.cancel. So our function says promise started, and after 1 second it is actually cancelled because source.cancel is being called, which is nice. Typical use cases, for example, like if you have a live type kind of search thing right there, you could use that. That's right here. Side note, the AbortController, this is something that exists already in browsers, but do note this is not an ECMAScript feature, this is a browser specific feature. So I like this a lot, but yeah, it's not part of ECMAScript, so you can use this awaiting the cancellation to be added. Then declarations and conditionals. This is another proposal, stage 1. So here we iterate over foo.data, and we first check it. Well, the problem here is that we have 2 lookups. Of course, engines can cache the lookup, but yeah. But we have 2 lookups here. So how can we cache that lookup ourselves? Well, we can do it before. So we can say let.data equals foo.data, and then we can use that data variable. The declarations and conditionals proposal says like, hey, what if you could like do this inside of the conditional, declare the data variable inside of the conditional, and it then looks like this. So do note this is not an equality check right here, this is actually an assignment. Declarations of foo.data will be stored into the data variable. This will save me some time. If you ever wrote PHP, you can do this in PHP. Then object.fromEntries. This is a nice one. This is part of ES 2019. Well, I only mentioned it because I want to talk about object.entries, which is part of ES 2017. So we have this object right here. If you want to have the keys, we use object.keys. If you want to have the values, we use object.values from ES 2017, and we get back this array with all of the values. What we also have is object.entries, and this one returns us an array, and then each child of that array again is an array, with the first part being the key and the second part being the value. I like this one because this allows us to iterate over objects. So object.entries user for each, and then some function there, some callback function. Well, we have the entry, and then the first part of the entry, that was the key, the second part with index 1, that was the value. We can improve this piece of code by using the structuring. So we add it in there, so we plug the key and the value from there, from the entry, we can use that. But what I like to do is do the structuring immediately inside of the function signature, and it looks like this. This one is really nice. I use it a lot, especially in React. I use it a lot. So object.entries, that one we had in ES 2017. Well, in ES 2019 we also have object.fromEntries. It does the opposite. So from the array with the arrays inside, it can build an object for you. Then slice notation. This is the last one I will be talking about. Slice notation, I like this one too, because say we have an array and we want to select something from there. Well, the old way to do it was to use array.slice. With the new notation, oh sorry, I have to focus the right screen here. With the new notation, you can use this from index 1 to 3, and we have it back. Why do I like this? This also works on strings, which is nice. And then one that I will be skipping because we're running short on time here is pattern matching. What this basically allows you to do is check what is inside of an object and then do some actions on there. So if you want to calculate the length of a vector, it depends on if you have a 2D or 3D vector, which formula you have to use. Using pattern matching, which we see right here, you can just simply watch the shape of that object and do some action based on that. But I'll skip this due to time constraints. And that, my friends, was just a selection. There's plenty and plenty and plenty of more stuff for you to check out. It's all online. TC39, they work in the open, so you can check it all online. Or you can also check my blog. I write about some of these proposals from time to time. If you are wondering, can I use this? When can I use this? Well, actually, you can use most of these stuff today. Because many proposals, they are already in browsers, be it behind a flag, for example, dynamic import that exists from 2017 in Chrome and in Safari Technology Preview. And also there are lots and lots of Babel plugins that you can use. I want to thank you for attending my talk, ESNext proposals to look forward to. My name is Bramus and I also have a blog, bram.us. Thank you very much.